Ellie, you need to grasp the consequences of your actions. How could you neglect your responsibilities as a wife and create problems for Daniel? You're a terrible wife. I'm going to teach you a lesson. Well, Mother, I had my reasons for leaving. I calmly responded. It doesn't matter. We're planning to move into a new, lovely apartment. If you want to live with us, I'll tell you where the new place is, she insisted. I was confident that my mother-in-law still remained unaware of the full situation. Well, there's a good chance she knows nothing, I retorted. No, thank you. I declined her offer. What? She questioned. My name is Ellie. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. My husband, Daniel, and I have been married for 5 years. He's now 40, 5 years my senior. I used to date older individuals, but I was attracted to Daniel because of his kindness and generosity. Our relationship was great, so we decided to get married. Initially, our marriage was fulfilling. However, a few months later, our peaceful life took a dark turn. I lost my job and suddenly, Daniel was laid off too. The reason given was the company's worsening financial situation due to the economic downturn. I never expected that Daniel, who worked for a large corporation, would lose his job. I had assumed that we would have financial security throughout our lives, but it seemed that life had other plans. We found ourselves struggling financially. I had been a housewife, but I decided to rejoin the workforce immediately. I reached out to the company I had worked for before getting married, and luckily, they agreed to rehire me. Apparently, an employee had recently left the organization due to maternity leave, and my return was a welcome solution. This additional income was a relief, and I hoped that if Daniel could find new employment, we'd be able to recover. However, it's challenging for a middle-aged man to secure a new job, and Daniel had little choice but to work part-time as a day laborer, earning an average of around $700 per month. Here I was, returning to work with the expectation of a reasonable salary, while we were still barely making ends meet. I began to consider downsizing to a more affordable apartment to alleviate our financial burden. I broached the idea with Daniel, hoping he would see the merit in it. Hello, the rent here is too expensive. Can we consider moving to a more affordable place? I suggested. Choosing a cheaper location could help us save money and make our lives more manageable. However, my proposal was met with strong opposition. No, we're not moving out of here, Daniel responded firmly. But why not? I asked. My mom would question why we're moving to a smaller, cheaper apartment, he replied. I was puzzled by his response and couldn't understand his resistance. So what? Why didn't you just tell her the truth? We're going through a tough time because you're currently unemployed. My suggestion seemed to hit a nerve as Daniel's face turned red and he raised his voice. Don't tell my mother that I'm unemployed. Your salary and my part-time earnings are enough to cover the rent. Let's leave it at that. I was taken aback by his reaction and left feeling both startled and perplexed. You were more concerned with your pride and your home than with defending your marriage. Even if we could pay the rent, we'd still struggle to make ends meet. That's why I came up with this notion. We couldn't save any money. But Daniel insisted and refused to give in. I had no choice but to give up once. After that, life remained difficult. Daniel once made an astonishing comment to me. Hey, is this all we have for dinner today? You used to have many more dishes. Just because you started working does not excuse you from fulfilling your responsibilities. Don't be lazy about this. Daniel's statements made me angry, so I answered, I have no choice. We are straining to make ends meet. I'm doing my best at both home and work. It's because someone is very proud of wanting to live here. I have no choice but to cut my food expenses. Alternatively, you might simply make more money, and everything will be ideal. When I made inflammatory statements, Daniel replied, What the hell? Don't dare to say this to me. Simply wait and see. I'll get another job with a good firm and earn more money than you. Daniel became angry. I felt I was strong enough to bear him like this, but if it boosted Daniel's motivation, I convinced myself that it would be all right. However, he was unable to find a new career and had to work part-time as a day laborer. Despite his motivation, he was unable to locate new employment. I could understand if he had studied extensively and obtained a qualification, but he did not. He just worked half-time. Every time he went for an interview, the interviewer rejected him, and Daniel grew weary of having to conform to the younger interviewer. So he stopped looking for work. He still believed he could make more money than me, but I was dissatisfied with him and had already given up. Besides, I'm not only worried about Daniel. I received another phone call early today. My mother-in-law called without hesitation, despite the fact that I was at work. Just this morning, there were almost 10 calls left. I returned the call on my lunch break. My mother-in-law had a high-pitched voice from the beginning. Why didn't you answer the phone immediately? I told you the other day that I was at work, didn't I? Come on, you call it working. My calls are my first priority. My mother-in-law lost her husband a year ago, and she has been calling me a lot since then. I assumed she was lonely and felt obligated to help her. But all she said was something like, "It's my responsibility to support husbands," etc. She became enraged when she realized I had only recently started working. They kept contacting me when I was at work. Did you have a proper conversation about it with Daniel? You can't even respond to my phone call. I apologize. It's difficult for us to live with you right now. I am not asking for your opinion. Daniel will not protest it. No, Daniel claims it is still too difficult. Furthermore, we are encountering some financial difficulties. How may there be financial issues? Daniel works for a large corporation. They pay him handsomely, so you two are wealthy, correct? When she says stuff like that, I constantly find myself at a loss for words. Daniel has repeatedly requested that I not tell my mother-in-law the truth. Therefore, I am unable to tell her. And then my mother-in-law says it's selfish of me to go to work. And she thinks I am lying about how difficult it is to produce ant meat. Well, I suppose. My mother-in-law's phone calls are really bothersome, not only at work but even at home at night. Most of the time, a wife's main duty should be to assist her husband, and caring for your spouse also includes caring for his mother. You haven't visited me in quite some time. What is the matter with you? I work a full-time job and am fatigued. Daniel works a part-time job on weekends. That's why our vacations don't coincide. I apologize. We're both quite busy. It's difficult to fit it into our calendars. I do not care about your schedule. Besides, Daniel is off on weekends. Can you visit on weekends perhaps? My mother-in-law persisted with her inquiries, her frustration and disappointment apparent. I sensed it was time to be honest. I attempted to explain Daniel's situation to her. Actually, Daniel works on weekends. He's currently engrossed in a big project and has been putting in weekend hours. Once things settle down, we'll come to see you. Before I could reveal more, Daniel, who had been lounging on the sofa, reached over and took my phone. He spoke into it. I apologize for not visiting, Mom. I've been swamped with a major project, including weekends. I promise we'll visit once things calm down. He ended the call and returned to where I stood. I questioned his actions. What were you doing? Were you preventing me from telling my mom the truth? I was just being honest, he responded. She keeps saying those things because she doesn't know what's really going on. I was frustrated but urged him. I understand, but please don't tell my mom that. Just let it go. Fine, whatever, he retorted. Just swallow your pride and tell her the truth. Enough, I sighed in exasperation, and he retreated to his room. I felt like I was on the brink of collapse, unable to resolve our financial woes. My husband and his mother seemed determined to corner me. Daniel claimed his day job was too demanding, and he refused to contribute to household chores. However, his job was not a full-time commitment. He only worked on weekends and once during the week. I believed he could do more to increase our income or at least learn to share the household responsibilities. Why do you do nothing at home but expect me to do all the chores and work? I wondered aloud, overwhelmed by his inaction. Feeling burdened by his constant complaints about my lack of contribution, I decided to take a break and leave home for a while. I sought refuge at my parents' place for a week to demonstrate to Daniel just how demanding housework could be. I had confided in my parents about our situation, and they urged me to consider divorce. However, I was hesitant to end our marriage so quickly. We had once been in love and had been married for 5 years. I wanted to make every effort to salvage our relationship before resorting to divorce. During my stay at my parents' home, I received a phone call from Daniel. "When are you coming back? Where's my mail?" he inquired. "I won't be home for a while," I replied. "You'll need to handle all the housework while I'm away." "Don't be ridiculous," he retorted. "Just come back and take care of the chores." "No, I won't," I asserted. "You need to understand how challenging it is for me to manage all the household responsibilities while I'm working." I ended the call, ignoring his subsequent attempts to reach me. Life at my parents' house felt surprisingly comfortable. I shared household chores with my parents, and my mother even cooked delicious meals for us. It was a refreshing break from the constant demands and frustrations at home, and I appreciated the respite from household responsibilities. I spent approximately a week at my parents' house, and I began to consider staying a bit longer. However, the distance between my parents' house and my office was quite significant, requiring a challenging hour-and-a-half commute each way. Despite the inconvenience, I believed it was crucial for Daniel to gain a deeper understanding of the challenges of housework. Eventually, I made my way back to our home. I was initially concerned that the house might be in disarray, but to my surprise, it was cleaner than I had anticipated. However, something felt peculiar. I couldn't believe it at first. I decided to check Daniel's room, only to discover that his clothes and suitcases were missing from the closet. My immediate thought was that he had gone to stay with his mother. I decided to give him a call. "What's the reason for calling me now? Where are you?" he inquired. "I'm at my parents' house," I replied. "You didn't immediately go to your parents' house after I left, did you?" "That's correct," he confirmed. "What's going on? This doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't have left in the first place. I'm already upset. I'm not going back to that house." "What do you mean?" I asked in confusion. "I'm moving in with my mom," he stated. "I'm going back to my parents' house and not just returning. We're moving to a new apartment." I was at a loss for words as I listened to his announcement. The voice on the phone then changed, and I heard, "Hey, Ellie, do you have any idea what you've done? How dare you abandon your duties as a wife and cause problems for Daniel? You're a terrible wife, and I'm going to teach you a lesson." "Well, Mother, I had my reasons for leaving," I responded, trying to remain composed. "It doesn't matter," she retorted. "We're moving to a new, nice apartment. If you want to live with us, I'll tell you where it is." I was confident that my mother-in-law still didn't know the full story, so I responded, "No, no, no, thank you." "What?" my mother-in-law exclaimed in surprise. I declined right away. I explained, "So there's no need for me to go. I can manage on my own. If Daniel chooses to live with me, then he'll have to be on his own. I've learned to be self-sufficient." "Can you live alone?" she questioned, sounding concerned. "You've been relying on him for so long." "Don't worry," I assured her. "I have the means to live independently. If we can't live together, there's no point in remaining a couple. Therefore, I'm filing for a divorce." "What?" Her voice revealed shock at the mention of divorce. Perhaps it was the word divorce that triggered such a reaction. I could hear my mother-in-law and my husband's surprised voices on the other end of the line. I continued, "I can't stay married to a husband like him any longer. I need to move on from this dreadful marriage as soon as possible." My mother-in-law interjected, "Wait a minute, Ellie. There's no need to bring up divorce." But I was resolute. "I can't continue in this marriage. I've made up my mind." At this point, my mother-in-law exclaimed, "How dare you speak to Daniel like that? We don't want a life like yours either. So okay, Daniel, let's go ahead with the divorce." "No," I responded firmly. "I'll prepare the divorce papers myself." At this, my mother-in-law unleashed her anger, saying, "You're impossible. You'll regret this." It was clear that apologies were too late and the situation had reached an irreparable point. "The feeling is mutual," I retorted, bringing the call to an end. As soon as I disconnected the phone call, I expected my mother-in-law and her son to arrive with the divorce papers. Thankfully, things were unfolding according to my plan. I was grateful that Daniel had shown no willingness to change and had returned to his mother's home. It made it easier for me to make my decision. He wasn't going to change, and there was no reason for us to remain together. While waiting for my mother-in-law to arrive, I decided to start packing my bags. A few hours later, she showed up and asked, "Oh, Daniel isn't here?" "No, he doesn't need to be here," I replied. "Here are the divorce papers. I already had him fill out his part. You should complete yours as soon as possible." She handed me the divorce papers, and I couldn't help but notice that the words in Daniel's section seemed to be written in shaky handwriting. She continued to berate me, saying, "My Daniel is such a wonderful man, and yet he's reluctantly getting a divorce because of a terrible wife like you. I'll never forgive you for causing trouble for such a great person. I hope you live a miserable life and regret it." As I filled out my part of the form, my mother-in-law continued to yell at me. Daniel's pride had prevented him from telling his mother the truth, and I couldn't help but feel sorry for him. I sold our house, and when my mother-in-law asked about it, I reluctantly revealed it was an older house, so it sold for a modest price. It was around $50,000, not much, but enough for my retirement. Daniel will cover the expenses for our new apartment. My mother-in-law seemed surprised and said, "Wow, I can't believe you got approved for a new place. What exactly are you talking about?" "Daniel is a person of high status. It's only natural," I responded. "Yes, I transferred the money to Daniel's account." "How did you find out?" "That's not important. Stop asking so many questions," she retorted. "You're just a divorced woman, and it's clear you're still hung up on him." "But it's too late. I've already agreed to the divorce." With that, she abruptly left. I was overjoyed to be rid of both her and her son. I finished packing the rest of my belongings and moved them to my parents' house. I also signed a lease for a single-person apartment where I planned to live after leaving. I had successfully manipulated my mother-in-law to relinquish any claim to the property. "There's no way I'm giving you Daniel's property. Get used to it." I recalled her pale face during the property division discussion, which still amused me. Then about 2 years later, I received a call from an unknown number one morning, just before heading to work. I answered the phone, thinking it might be a work-related call. To my surprise, it was my ex-mother-in-law on the other end. "Oh, my dear Ellie, please help me," she pleaded. "Mother, you can't keep calling me like this. We're strangers now," I responded firmly. "Don't say that. I'm in trouble." "So you can't pay the rent and your savings are running low?" I inquired. "How do you know that?" she asked, sounding surprised. "He didn't tell you about the financial problem until things got tough, did he?" I remarked. "Oh, you knew it," she admitted. "I knew it, and I tried to tell you many times, but every time I tried, Daniel told me not to." "I didn't realize that," I said, feeling a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry, Ellie. I didn't pay attention. I'll apologize, but please come back." "I don't want to," I replied firmly. "He wouldn't change, no matter how hard I tried, and both of you always treated me poorly. I don't want to spend time with someone like you ever again." "Please don't say that," she pleaded. "I don't have anything to eat anymore. I'm really struggling." According to my ex-mother-in-law, Daniel had been trying to maintain appearances, but he hadn't informed her about their financial problems. He used the $50,000 from the sale of the family home to cover his rent. To avoid raising suspicion, he occasionally splurged on expensive groceries and fancy meals. Unfortunately, this lavish lifestyle depleted his savings, leaving him penniless. "He got what he deserved, didn't he?" I remarked. "Why don't you go set aside your pride and live more modestly in an affordable apartment?" "No, it wasn't supposed to be like this," she sobbed. "I was supposed to live a comfortable life with my successful son." After listening to her lament, I quietly hung up the phone and blocked all incoming calls. I also obtained a restraining order against her as a precaution, just in case I needed to involve the police. It struck me how both Daniel and his mother always relied on others and failed to take responsibility. Parents and children can be remarkably alike in their behavior, and I decided to learn from their mistakes. I focused on living independently and getting my life back on track. In the end, the husband continued to live a life that didn't match his status, and the mother-in-law blamed only her daughter-in-law without questioning her son. I was relieved that I had been able to sever ties with such a toxic mother and son duo. I had faith that I could lead a fulfilling and independent life.